We were down to Eagles training camp yesterday, Hugh. And, as we go throughout training camp and we look at the Eagles and kind of how they stack up with other teams in the NFC, other teams around the NFL, you look at these rosters. And ESPN released yet another list, this one ranking the rosters in the NFL as we enter this season. And the Eagles, to some people's surprise, do not rank number one. They rank number 2 behind the Baltimore Ravens. Some people upset about this. But I don't understand why. Like, I look at this roster, I look at this team. Are the Eagles good? Yeah, the Eagles are really good. I mean, they obviously bring back a lot of talent from last year, but I don't look at this team and think that they're in a tier of their own. I think as this season begins, the Eagles have come back to the pack a little bit. You look at the defensive side of the ball. You've lost some players over there. We don't know if the replacements are going to be able to come in and fill in adequately immediately. I do not believe, as we enter this season, the Eagles are in a tier of their own. And want to get your thoughts on it. 215-592-9494. 215-592-9494 if you want to get in. Do you believe that the Eagles are in a tier of their own as they enter this season? Do you think they just pick up where they left off? Clearly the best team in football. I don't. I think it's a new season. You lost some players. I mean, I think there's reason to be confident that they can kind of, fill in those gaps. But until we see it, I don't think you can just say that. And I don't have a problem with the Eagles being ranked behind the Ravens on this list, Hugh. I don't think they're in a tier of their own as we enter the season.
I find that pretty interesting that they have the Eagles ranked behind the Ravens. I guess that's because of the quarterback and how people feel about Lamar. But when I look at their depth chart and I look at the offense, because that's what we're talking about, I think, in my opinion, is that we're looking at these teams and we're grading them by their offensive firepower. Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers had a 1,000-yard season last year, 4 touchdowns though. That don't jump out to me, Who else they got? Rashad Bateman. I mean, okay, but when you talk about the talent that the Eagles have, you talk about the offensive line. We have so many stars on one side of the ball that's where I feel – that's why I'm bullish about the Eagles. Not obviously not because I played here, but you talk about Saquon Barkley at running back. You're talking about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith at receiver. You're talking about – did I say Saquon Barkley's name yet? Didn't say his name yet. I said Jahan Dotson, who looked like he was coming on towards the end of the year. Dallas Goedert, who had moments last year when he was healthy where he shined. And then that offensive line, man, when I think about this Eagles team and what they've been able to put together, you talk about 2 all-pro tackles, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson. And that's a lot of talent that you have on your roster. You have a lot of talent on your roster. Cam Jurgens, center. That to me, and they're all in their prime, that to me screams matchup problems for everybody.
Yeah, and I think they are a really good team. I mean, you look at this roster, it's one of the best in the NFL, but I look at some of these other rosters too. I mean, the Ravens, they have a really good team. The Bills, they have a really good team. I don't think we can look at the Eagles and just say they're in a tier of their own and that nobody's anywhere close. I think these other teams are close, and I think it is a tight battle between these teams.
I will say this for this argument, and I think, again, I always preface it with this. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. And I think a lot of times when we make these lists, it always starts with the play of the quarterback. That's how these things start. And Lamar Jackson is a hell of a quarterback, him and Josh Allen. But the talent that they have around them, say if they have an off game, they don't have enough talent around him. I'm going to say it like this because this is a good way to say it. They don't have enough talent around them to sustain them if the quarterback is not on top of his game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
The Eagles are in a position where they can win games if their quarterback is not playing well.
Right. And this is the way I look at it as far as that goes. I think they were last year. I think last year that was the case. And I am confident in this defense. I think the defense is going to be good. But, the truth is, they did lose essentially half the starters on that side of the ball. I mean, you lost 2 quarters of your secondary. You lost a few guys up front. Milton Williams, I think, was a really good player. Josh Sweat, I mean, obviously was huge in the postseason. So I just don't think it's so clear that the Eagles still have the same kind of roster they had last year. I don't know if they would be able to make up for that in the same way, because in 2023 the defense wasn't able to make up for it when Jalen didn't play well. They weren't able to overcome those things, and now losing some of those pieces on defense, I think it's fair to look at this roster and say they've come back to the pack a little bit. And I also think when we look at a team coming off a great season like the Eagles came off of, we always kind of just assume it's going to pick up where they left off. In 2023, we kind of assumed that team, okay, well, they were great in 2022. They're going to be the same way. And they were for a lot of the year. In the end, obviously, kind of fell apart. In 2018, I think we look back on it now and feel like, okay, well, we should have seen that team wasn't nearly as good as we expected. But at that time, we felt like, okay, well, they're going to pick up right where they left off. This team's going to have a chance to repeat. And just because you have one great year, I don't think that necessarily means you're going to be as great the next season, because we look at teams like the Patriots, we look at teams like the Chiefs, they're the exception. They're not the rule when it comes to Super Bowl champions and sustaining success. So I do think they've come back to the pack a little bit.
It's funny, when we started this week, I think one of the first things we talked about was I was asked, do I feel that there's a hangover, right? And I said yes. I said there's potential for a hangover. And I got to tell you, man, being down there, being around those guys, feeling their energy, feeling their focus, I don't feel the same way that I felt Monday. And, I do know, let me say this. I do know that there's potential for it to be a letdown, because, anything can happen, all those intangibles that we talk about. But as far as their focus is concerned and what they're talking about, the one thing that I always look at when I look at teams and the teams that I've been on is if the players are echoing the sentiment of the coaches. And the one thing that jumped out to me, TK, the first day we were out there, it started with Coach Sirianni, and it started with Howie. And they talked about, certain words they didn't use, and they talked about being focused and getting ready for the next one. So we get the chance to talk to Quinyon Mitchell and a couple other guys, Nolan Smith, and they've echoed the same thing. So to me, that says that has been beat in their head. They know what they have to do. They know the work that they have to put in, and they know that they're in a sweet spot where if they want to keep this thing going, they have to get back to work. So that's why I feel good about it. I think that, and when you look at man for man, when you line up against other teams, I think that's where the Eagles have their advantage, because they have some seed. They're in the sweet spot of where they are as far as their careers are concerned. Like all of them, they're in their prime and they're focused. So I think with all of that being said, that puts them in a tier in their own, because you have a lot of guys who are still viable players that are going to bring the other young guys along.
Yeah, and hey, I don't worry about it from a mentality perspective. I think they're focused. I think they're saying all the right things, and I think they're doing all the right things. I just think from a roster standpoint, you look at it, of course, they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent on this roster, but it's not the same team that it was last year.
True.
And I think they're going to need to prove, especially on defense, that these guys who are stepping in are going to be able to do the job. I mean, I look at, Darius Slay, I think, is a big loss. I mean, that he played really well last year.
Yeah.
You look at Milton Williams up front. Milton Williams, and obviously you weren't going to bring him back, but it's still a big loss in terms of the defense. I think talent-wise, they're going to need to show that these other guys behind them can step up, and that's why I don't think we can just go into the season and say, oh yeah, they're still clear-cut the number one team in football.
I think they are, because for me, what has always been is most of your resources have been allocated to the offensive side of the ball. The guys on defense are somewhat interchangeable. They're young. I look at this the same way I look at the Kansas City Chiefs defense a few years ago when they had those young corners out there and they were doing on-the-job training. That might be a little bit of this situation, And I understand that it's going to be a slog when you talk about the tight schedule that they have. You got week 3, You got the Rams coming into town, and they've already said that they got this game scheduled on the schedule. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's going to be tough, but I think that there's enough of a foundation, especially on that defensive side of the ball, that they might not be as dynamic as they were out the gate last year, but they're going to grow and get better like they did last year.
Yeah.
And this offense is going to, like the offense that we were supposed to see, TK, at the beginning of the year, I think that's going to have to carry it away a little bit at the beginning.
I agree. And if you want to get in 215-592-9494, 215-592-9494, do you feel like the Eagles are still in a tier of their own when it comes to roster? I don't. I think their roster is really good, but I don't think it's egregious to have a team like the Ravens ranked over them right now. I do think they've taken a little bit of a step back from a talent perspective on paper. We'll see how it plays out during the year. Last year at this time, we wouldn't have thought the Eagles had the best roster in football either, and it turned out they did. But I don't think we can look at it clearly right now and say they're in a tier of their own. Would love to get your take. 215-592-9494 if you want to get in. Kyle Quinn producing the show today. Kyle, do you think the Eagles are in a tier of their own when it comes to this roster?
I think they are firmly in the top tier amongst every other team in the NFL. But to say that they're in a tier of their own with how many question marks they have going into this season, I can't go there just yet. Like, they had to replace a lot of guys on the defense, and whether you think the defense is still going to be top 5, top 10, whatever, I think we should all be counting on the defense taking a little bit of a step back. I mean, I understand everyone's so infatuated with Vic Fangio, and I love Vic Fangio. It was amazing what he did here last season.
Amazing.
But he does need talent, just like every other coach needs talent to be the best in the league. Like, if you just look at his ranks, in years that he's been a defensive coordinator, he was number 1 in terms of yards last season as the Eagles defensive coordinator. The year before in Miami, 10th. 8th the year before that, 21st, 12th. Like, Vic Fangio has had middle of the pack to, bottom level of the pack defenses, and that's because the talent matters. So there's just too many question marks along the defense for me to say that they're definitely going to be the number 1 defense in the league. The safety spot, I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know who's going to fill that part out the corner outside opposite Quinyon Mitchell. I don't know who's going to fill that. I still don't know if Nolan Smith is going to carry over what he did last season, Jalix Hunt, all that same stuff. Jordan Davis going to be a question mark too. Like, he came into camp looking like he was in great shape. Yeah, but I don't know what that's going to look like.
Gotta leave them cheeseburgers alone, man.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then I just can't expect Saquon to blow by everybody like he did last season, 2,000 yards. I don't even know what Kevin Patullo's offense is going to look like. And I think the interesting thing is, if you look at the odds for Super Bowl winning teams, or like the team's odds for a team to win the Super Bowl, the Eagles are 3rd, behind Baltimore, behind Buffalo. Like, at least nationally, they're viewed as a team that sort of fell back into that pack of top-tier teams in the NFL. I just need to see a little bit more before I say that they are far and away the best team in the NFL. They're still in a tier of their own going into this year.
Right, and especially that's interesting because you'd imagine in the NFC, the Eagles would have a clearer path to the Super Bowl than those teams in the AFC because that's a stronger conference. And this is coming from somebody who thinks the defense is going to be really good. I do think the defense has a chance to be better than they were last year, but the bottom line, man, they got to go on the field and prove it. I mean, Keely Ringo, I think he can step in. That being said, we haven't seen Keely Ringo play consistent snaps at the NFL level yet. He's going to have to show it. Whoever that safety is, whether it's Andrew Makuba, whether it's Sidney Brown, they've got to show that they can do that at the NFL level. Same thing for those guys up front, like Jordan Davis. It's great that he's come in shape. But we got to see, can he take on more snaps? Can he take on more reps and more responsibility? And Kyle mentioned the Patullo thing there. I think that's the biggest thing this offseason. I mean, the biggest loss for the Eagles, sure, they lost players on defense. Mm-hmm. To me, the biggest loss was Kellen Moore. I thought Kellen Moore did a phenomenal job last year. Kevin Patullo taking over. And I don't, it's not fair to say that, look at what happened with Brian Johnson in 2023. It's going to be the same thing this year. They're different coaches. It's a different situation. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that we do have, the last time the Eagles lost their coordinator and their play caller, things on the offensive side of the football really fell apart.
Yeah, I feel like you have to go into it this year. Hopefully you have a better understanding, better communication. And Coach Patullo just enhances what they're already doing. Because there's going to be some variations in this offense. No question about that. But the core fundamentals of it should stay the same. Now, the way that you get to certain plays and things, I think those have to change. But the familiarity with the
that's a tough word.
Familiarity.
Use the
With
that's
the
a tough one
offense,
here. I'm here for
it's
you.
I think that's gonna be I think that's gonna be important.
Yeah.
Familiarity.
Well,
familiarity.
There you go.
I guess for me, it's how do the Eagles adjust to the league's adjustment to them, right? Like, who doesn't have the Eagles circled on their calendar right now?
Everybody does. They're the Super Bowl champions.
And if you just look at the schedule based on what we know now, there's not too many tomato cans. So, like, it's going to be a challenge. Everyone's going to give you their best shot. And do the Eagles have a counterpunch? Yeah. I just, like, that's something I need to see before I go off and say that they're definitely the best team in the league.
I agree. That's a very old man term from Kyle, by the way. Tomato cans. I feel like you don't hear anybody under the age of 50 say tomato can.
I use it.
Oh, sorry. All right.
But it's I hear what Kyle's saying, but a lot of the things that we do, well, they do in the NFL, is executing and being able to run things that you're familiar with and not make mistakes. I think for the most part, that's where the Eagles are going to be. They're going to be consistent in some of the things that they do. They just need to be a little bit more creative in how they decide to do those, like how you move guys around to get to the formations that you want to get to and confuse the defense that you're playing against. So that's going to be important, just the evolution of this offense and how you get to certain things that you do well.
Are the Eagles in a tier of their own as they enter this season? I say no. I think they got to go on the field and prove it, as a lot of the players have said. I mean, Jordan Mailata said it. Landon Dickerson echoed the same sentiments yesterday, that they got to go out on the field and prove it. Last year. And I do think when you look at the roster, sure, they've come back to the pack a little bit. It doesn't mean they're a bad team. They're still, as Kyle said, firmly entrenched in that top tier. But do I think they're in a tier of their own as they ended last season clearly after Super Bowl 59? I don't believe that. Hugh does.